I call to order the meeting of the Budget and Finance Human Resources Working Group. We have with us today Councilwoman Jennifer Brinsley Webb, as well as Councilwoman Quinn Evans-Siegel, and myself, Councilwoman Quante Toombs, the chair. We do have a couple other council members who are going to come at some point during the meeting, and we do have some distinguished guests in the audience. Director Shannon Hall, Human Resources, Hannah Zeitlin with the Council Office, Aaron Pratt with Finance, and Michelle Lane also with Finance. So greatly appreciate y'all coming and helping us doing the work of the committee. This is our third meeting. The first meeting we met, we were trying to figure out how we were going to tackle this topic. And we got some information from Finance in terms of salary savings for all of the departments for fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23. Fiscal year 24 hadn't been wrapped up at that time. We decided as a committee that we would focus on fiscal year 23 and then leave it up to the departments to give us fiscal year 24 information, because they would have more immediate access to their own financial information. And so at our last meeting, we came up with the questions. We identified the departments that we wanted to ask questions to. So it was the 10 departments that had the largest amount of salary savings for fiscal year 23. And then we looked at the 4 departments that had the lowest percentage of budget use. So just trying to figure out like why they were under budget, like what occurred during the fiscal year for those departments. There was one that was in both buckets. So planning had a large amount of salary savings, but then they also had one of the lower percentages of budget, total budget used, and so they were in 2 buckets. So there was overlap there. So all of the departments, except for fire, because fire was inadvertently overlooked when the questions went out. So they got their questions today, and Chief Swan said he's going to get those answered ASAP. So we will have to add them in at a later meeting. But the purpose of today's meeting is to go over the department responses. We have a lot of paper in front of us. The departments, most were pretty thorough in their responses, and a lot of them added some additional charts to illustrate their responses. And so we want to go through these, not that we're going to necessarily sit here and read, but just going through each department and identifying anything that jumps out, any type of follow-up questions that we need to ask, if there's any department that we need to invite to a future committee meeting. We can do that during this, or decide that during this meeting, and also looking at next steps, because as we come back from the holiday in 2025, we're getting to where departments are finalizing their requests to the mayor's office, and the mayor's office is going to be working on finalizing the mayor's budget to meet that May 1st deadline, and then of course it's in the council's court once the budget is filed. And we want to have something tangible that the council can use in making its decisions when we're considering making adjustments to the mayor's proposed budget. And that could be in terms of some of the suggestions from the committee, could be in terms of how we allocate resources, but also I think we discussed during one meeting policies, maybe changing some things around in the charter in terms of how the relationship between the council and how we allocate money, and then the accountability of the departments when we allocate money for particular projects or budget items. So we can get started. And I'm just going to pull things out of the stack because our papers may not be in the same order. But does everyone have the Planning Commission responses?
planning.
The one with the, that's the only one that's green.
It's the rest.
I will go over the questions. Planning, again, was one that was in the top 10 in terms of largest amount of salary savings, and then it was also in that group of 4 departments that had the least, the lowest percentage of total budget allocation used. And so the questions were in fiscal year 23, you know, how many vacancies? Planning Commission had 18 vacancies. What are the actual position types? Are those positions full or part-time? What is the salary range for those vacant positions? Then question 2 was how many vacant positions did the commission have for fiscal year 24? What are those actual position types, full or part-time? What's the salary range? And the rationale behind asking the salary range was to see, you know, do we need to be offering more money? Like, why are you, you know, still holding these vacant positions? Salary savings for planning was $2,139,295.70 for fiscal year 23. And so the question was, please, how did you spend those salary savings? Be as specific as possible and include the date that each expenditure or group of expenditures was made. And then there's similar questions for fiscal year 24 in terms of how much in salary savings did you have? How did you spend that? Question 6, if any salary savings were spent on non-salary related items, for example, training, software upgrades, etc. Did the commission consult with finance prior to making that expenditure? And then the question 7 asks, were there any budget line items that came under budget resulting in additional savings other than salary savings going into Metro's fund balance? If so, please identify those line items and explain why they were under budget. And so planning has 18 vacancies. Fiscal year 23 had 18 vacancies. It says that they began the fiscal year with 28. So they were able to fill 10 positions. Those 18 vacancies, I don't know what an ASO is.
Administrative Services Officer.
Okay, Administrative Services Officer, thank you.
With what they're trying to fill, oh, I'm sorry, Chair.
Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
With what they're trying to fill with the planning department, what are their qualifications? I'm pretty sure that it's not just like a regular person. I mean, do they have to be able to read a set of plans? I mean, what level are we talking about on this?
When I'm looking at these position types they have listed, this the ASO and the ASM would be Administrative Services Officers, so professional administrative classifications, like for the function of the office and likely supporting planners is my guess. Administrative Services Manager would be somebody who is managing over that team, most likely is my guess. And then you've got most of the other positions being planners to actually review the plans. And then planning managers that would help to manage these different components. You see, so the majority of their positions are planners, 4 planning managers, 1 planner 3, 5 planner 2s, 4 planner 1s, and then some administrative services series, which they use across departments, and that would not surprise me at all. So that feels relatively balanced.
And these are folks with like degrees or certain certifications.
Yes, the Administrative Services Officer does not necessarily require a degree. I think once you get to the Administrative Services Manager, which is several tiers up, that may require a degree off the top of my head, but that's a whole series by which we use across government and allows you to flex into the administrative support of each department's function and can be customized based on the functions of the department.
Okay.
I think their second page, I haven't obviously seen this before, but their second page I think tells a much clearer story, at least probably where they are, especially when you look at kind of the progression and then the status of the current vacancies.
So fiscal year 23, they got 25 new positions. 4 left, leaving them with 32 total vacancies. They hired 18 people. So net vacancies for fiscal year 23 is 14.
I did want to, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I did want to make sure that this was a great example here because when we were talking in the first meeting explaining this is a point in time at 6:30, and in 2023 and 2024 there was a massive amount of new positions added to the budget. So those positions would then start to be recruited and filled and stuff after we get them set up. Aaron Pratt, budget officer. So I want to just make sure that this report that we initially produced was just at that point in time, which had both the vacant positions that were already at the department level, added with the new positions as well.
I think if they came up with this is really helpful. Like, you kind of see this progression.
Yeah.
One of the things that I talked about initially, I think I've mentioned this to you guys before, with Mayor Cooper when he came in, one of the things I highlighted is that our staff size as a metro government was the same size between 2003 and 2019, even though we had grown exponentially. And so you see over the past 4 years, I think, addressing of deferred maintenance, and that included adding more FTEs. So you see this effusion across departments, and planning is a good example of this. But if you look at kind of the net, especially when you see the progression and the infusion that Aaron was talking about, but then the current status of the vacancies, if you really shake that out, really the only vacancies they're telling us they have right now, point in time, is 6, right? Because they've got 5 that are in the hiring process right now.
Okay.
So you've got in hiring process, so we've either got it on the street, we're interviewing, or there are offers that are going out right now, and 5 of them. They're holding 4, right, because many of us all had to hit the targeted savings, so we have those positions, but we hold them for part of a year before we hire.
Okay.
That's definitely a strategy you will see departments use very consistently, including my own. And so then you have the recent vacancies, right, through natural attrition. So really, I think you could argue that the only real vacancies they have right now are probably 2, right? Because they intend to hire likely the 4, but they're just holding those to achieve the targeted savings to fund the pay plan.
Right.
This is a really, I assume they came up with this. This is helpful.
I was gonna say, like, the planning department has presented this in a way that is clearer than I think I've ever seen, and
Yeah.
this would be helpful to, I think about in our budget questionnaire.
Yeah,
as we're
kudos to
looking at-
whoever did this.
Yeah, this is really good.
Yeah, it's simple, it's readable, yeah,
Yeah.
It's like they have degrees in making things
yeah.
easy.
Kudos to the planning department. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and they didn't, the money that they did spend was like a small
Yeah.
item.
The rest went back to the fund
Yeah.
balance.
44,000 to partially fund a scanning project. Yeah.
I think planning's doing a good job with how they're supposed to do it. I mean, they're a good example of, I would think, how the system's supposed to work.
Yeah. I agree with that.
And because I did want to interject as well, as things come up throughout the year, instead of coming to council for new supplementals, we do encourage them when they have something that comes up like this. We say, yes, if you got salary savings, if you got, expenditures that you need to do, or if you get ahead of some things, especially like last year, we knew we were coming up to a budget adjustment savings plan, and that there was going to be a very minimal amount of new improvements. So we said, use your budget in order to get ahead of some things, because we're going to have a targeted savings amount in 2025 on top of not probably being approved any new additional improvements. So this is kind of the methodology that we would like to see, that they're using their budget, coming to us, talking to us about things that they're trying to get ahead of, and then we're working with them to say, yeah, you're definitely within budget, within your realm to go after those expenditures.
All right. Next up, parks. I think there's a bunch of parts to the park.
I just have this, and MPD has the same little thing at the top.
Cause I remember seeing their email.
This,
They
it's
had a
like
bunch
this.
They had a bunch of attachments.
Yeah.
let's see. Fiscal year 23, Parks had 110.52 vacancies. And they have on the back of the page, it breaks down what those different positions are. Looks like the bulk 47 recreation leader. I think those are the folks that run the community centers. And then maintenance and repair workers, 23. So 110.52 FTE vacancies equals 133 actual people. So that means some of those folks are part-time. Okay.
Yeah, well, she puts on there whether they're part or full.
Well, most are full-time, actually.
Yeah,
Well,
most of them are.
says the recreation leaders are both full and part-time. Then in fiscal year 24, there are 86.13 vacancies. So Shannon, for fiscal year 24, it's saying that FTE vacancies was 86.13, but headcount vacancies is 105. So that's a difference of 28. So does that mean it's like a bunch of like part-time folks? Probably seasonal.
Yeah, I think so. I'm sorry, Shannon.
No. These are things I think we're trying to figure out together.
Right.
I think
Like
I
wave
kinda-
country kind of people?
I don't want to jump ahead, but I know a situation, like I know about like ITS. So I was asking when they're giving you information on FTE vacancies, right? So there's like the head counts, like the placeholders, like I have a position,
Right.
but if I don't have funding for that position, is that really a vacancy,
Gotcha.
right? And I don't know if that explains the delta, right? Like if you go to the budget book and it says I have 80 positions and 4 are vacant in HR. If I don't have the funding for the 4, then there's still technically 4 vacancies. They just don't have any funding by which I could hire them.
Gotcha.
So they're not real. Maybe then at that point you have to either right size or I need to successfully ask for funding in order to have funding to hire those positions, right? So that could be an explanation.
So I want to make sure I'm clarifying what you're saying. The 105 could be vacancies in the budget, but she doesn't have funding but for 86.13?
I don't know. I'm speculating. Like that
Speculating, right.
that could be a reason why.
Okay.
And when we ran the reports, our reports we ran, we only looked at FTE because headcount is one of those nebulous things where they can use their FTE to increase their headcount as long as they don't exceed their FTE. And then we also excluded shared positions. So we were only looking at, so reports we provided, which is that 86 number, was looking at just the FTE, the true personnel for the departments, because we know that there's a lot of pool positions, especially in shared positions, especially in parks that are seasonal. So we were trying to exclude a lot of those because they can use their FTE dollars to manage through additional headcount.
I think it's a fair question to ask them so that they can provide that explanation.
Okay. All right, so we had them down as to how, for fiscal year 23, is having salary savings of $7,478,688.58. They said that it was $6,059,213. But whichever amount, those savings were spent department-wide on items such as flooring, countertops, window replacements, painting of facilities, fitness equipment, maintenance equipment, and other deferred maintenance and operating needs. So they're using their salary savings to pay for maintenance and repair.
Yeah, they wanted to catch up on a lot of their deferred maintenance, which wasn't funded in budget that year, and because they had some salary savings towards the end of the year, they did ask, about a plan of using that to get ahead of the deferred maintenance, because even during that budget process, their deferred maintenance request wasn't fully funded.
Gotcha, okay.
So, do they have a, I guess, a spreadsheet booklet of what needs to be done to every metro park?
I wanna say they should.
I can't recall offhand. They do have a list of all of the projects that need attention, but I don't want to speak for them.
I'd like to know that. And I would like to get more detail, a better detail of how the 6 million was spent, and then where, did they put the other 1.4 back into the fund? If not, what is the discrepancy?
So they're saying that, that they didn't have 7.4 million, they had the 6 million, that's the accurate number for fiscal year 23.
And again, that could be a timing from when we ran the report and everything they may have had in queue, because we were just looking at the vacancies, and accruals and everything else will play an effect in that as well. So they may have ate through some of that because of accruals, but we just looked at the vacancies, what it should have been.
And in fiscal year 24, they report that they had 5.2 million in salary savings and used it for the same types of things, the flooring, countertops, window replacements. But I'm with you, Councilwoman Webb, like,
Be specific, what
Be
park it went
specific,
to,
what-
what happened
yeah,
Yeah,
with money.
and it looks like this is like a pattern 2 years in a row,
Yeah.
right?
yeah.
I mean, because I personally think, we need to see what kind of plan they're on, just to make sure, I mean, who decides, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and if it turns out they're not getting enough money for the maintenance, like that's a conversation I
Something
think
we
need
should
to-
know, yeah.
Yeah, we need to know that, because this seems like pretty good evidence they're spending it, but it's sort of pocketed elsewhere, which is really confusing from a transparency
Yeah,
standpoint.
yeah,
Yep.
I think some kind of reallocation is what I hear you guys saying, like, it's clear they need the money and that and that they have a real need. I think to this greater point, maybe asking them like, hey, have you thought about reallocating this, and then setting a schedule that hits all of these maintenance needs on a cadence with different park and recreation components that they need.
or if it's one of the top 10 or 15 items on the council list, that gets picked first, and then they, to where,
So if we're reallocating, saying, hey, you're spending $5 million every year on deferred maintenance, maybe it needs to be in that bucket, does that mean they're giving up positions to equal that $5 million? Because they're not filling those positions.
I think that's a question, like a dialogue that you have, like, do you still need these positions, or would you rather permanently reallocate maybe some of them? Maybe they're like, you know what, we still are having a hard time in these, but we still think we do need this number of vacancies, and we'd like to reallocate permanently to our operating budget this for maintenance, so that we can maintain a maintenance schedule on facilities on some kind of cadence that seems appropriate. I think allowing them the opportunity to kind of explain and explore that, to see if that's something that better meets their needs.
Okay.
I mean, it's kind of a similar process, like, every year as part of the budget process, right after the budget's funded, we go through a true-up, right? It's something that OMB supports departments through. So, I may have had a need in this particular bucket of money in my operating budget that I no longer need, but I need it somewhere else. I have an opportunity to engage in a dialogue and kind of put it in the right bucket. So I think there's space and capacity, but maybe there's a dialogue that allows, Director Odom and her team to kind of go and kind of reassess maybe where they want those buckets to be. But I think you allow them that opportunity, maybe ask if that's something that's better for them.
I mean, especially this is something that's tangible, that if we improve it, the communities across the city will be able to see.
Yeah. And it going back to the transparency, folks will know, oh, okay, they're spending money on these improvements.
I mean, because I know you've probably heard it, like, you know, I had some people, even though Whites Creek's not in my area, that the tennis courts need to be repaved. And of course, I got with Jennifer, and they're like, you know, they don't ever spend money on the parks. Well, just because they're not spending money on Whites Creek Park doesn't mean that they're not spending park over here at Hadley Park.
Right.
And so I think the more that we can make it transparent and say, hey, remember that we just got a bucket. We can't do everything in 1 year, but maybe come up with the plan. I think it would help with community engagement. I think it would help with community awareness and community relationships.
So I think, so asking, is there a list of pending projects or a deferred maintenance list? Asking in terms of the money that was spent from the salary savings, giving more detail about, you know, what the specific expenditure was, which facility it
Got
went to. And then the question of, are the vacant positions that Parks has, are those, is it necessary for Parks to continue to hold those positions, or should those funds or a portion of those funds be allocated to a different bucket?
Within their budget.
Within their budget,
Yeah.
yeah.
In your
right.
budget, yeah.
Yeah.
And then maybe ask about the discrepancy, because there might be another good legitimate reason that I can't speculate on.
Because it sticks out during budget season when you see 100 vacancies, but they're actually spending the money on much needed repairs and maintenance.
Yeah.
So,
I think this one definitely needs more looking into. Yeah, I'm gonna put this one in this bucket.
and it'd probably be helpful to have her come
Yeah, I think so too.
to the meeting. All right, who is next? This is in no particular order. The next one that's on my stack is the Community Review Board. And I believe for them, because of that state law where they had to, you have it, I'm sorry. It has-
What does it look like?
front and
No,
back page.
Here, okay.
I do not
It's
have
blue.
that one. Oh, wait, no, I do. I've read through it.
Okay.
No, yeah,
Yeah, it just says
Yeah.
Human Resources Work Group up top, but it says CRB like third line.
okay, got it, thank you. Got it.
So I did talk to Director Fitcher, and a lot of their discrepancy may be in, because of the state law that passed where they had to go from community oversight to community review board. And so that transition,
See.
yeah, so they only had one vacancy in fiscal year '23. They filled that in '24. Also, the timing of when they filled the vacancy contributed to,
The difference.
yeah, them being under budget. Now, I don't want to start anything, but Lou Birdie told me that it was their understanding that they couldn't use salary savings. Are there certain departments that are not allowed to use salary savings?
No, all departments, it's a conversation. Department budgets, the way it's adopted in the ordinance, it's at a total level. So, if they do have salary savings, you know, they usually work with their analysts to move some things around, do a budget journal to move it from personnel to operating and cover expenses. So, all departments, with consult, we work with them to try and maximize their budgets.
What I would say is a general practice as a department, you typically do not want to use recurring salary savings. I call it above and below the line. You don't really want to use that for your operating, right? The two shall never meet. You want to preserve that and then you use your operating. But I think Erin's described it great, because we're asking departments to work within their means. When there is salary savings, working and consulting with finance on these one-offs to make sure that that can be substantiated as a one-time cost and not otherwise erode the recurring savings so that you can hire future positions makes complete sense.
Yeah, that's a great point, because we really try and guard reoccurring costs for those one-time savings. We say no. It's definitely one-time cost for one-time savings to meet the business need, and we really make sure that it's documented in our system.
Well, that makes sense, that you wouldn't want to create an ongoing obligation with salary savings.
Councilmember Toombs, may I ask, what flagged them, they're not necessarily a department that I think runs very high on vacancy, so I just didn't know why they got flagged.
It was the percentage of budget used, allocated budget used.
Observation, right, speaking of the transition and timing. The COB, when it was established by charter, was very specific, right? Very specific language about what positions, how many of them,
Yep.
and a particular budget. And then when they transitioned to CRB, that model doesn't necessarily have all of those same
Doesn't.
requirements.
Right.
But I remember through that transition, because I was heavily involved, at least from the staff side, I don't think the budget was reduced. But there was a statutory budget floor in the charter when it was there. And so that, to the extent that they, that hasn't necessarily
Yeah.
been adjusted down at all. So that may have created that, but now they have more freedom within their structure to hire what is necessary to do their work.
Yeah, and I think there is just from community oversight to community review board is they lost one position. That was their attorney
Just
position.
the legal, yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. But the charter was very specific, like you will have these positions, where now, in this model, they're not bound by those positions or how many they are, or their functions have to be commensurate, like according to state law, right?
Yeah.
But they have more freedom to kind of craft what those positions are, what their functions and duties are commensurate with those provisions. They have more freedom than I think they did before, and certainly on the budgetary component.
I didn't see any issues with them. They didn't spend any of their salary savings, and it was just an issue of the transition and then the timing of hiring for the vacant position. They're fine. Next up, internal audit. And this was another one, it was just that they had one of the lower percentages of allocated money used, 78.94%. So roughly about $400,000 went back into the fund balance. That's not a huge amount, but just, checking to see if there are any issues. They didn't spend any of their salary savings either. Saying their consulting services for fiscal year '24 were significantly under budget. The contracts in place for these services expired, and the process to RFP and contract them took almost a year. As such, we cannot utilize the funds without the contracts in place. The contracts are now in place, and the funds are being spent with a projection to use almost all by the end of the year.
I think they did a good job too. And it looks like now they've hired the auditors they need.
Yep.
How do they choose who they're auditing? Or does every department get audited?
I can tell you my perception of that, but because there is at least a regular cadence on certain things that they do flag, but I do think it could probably even come from referrals to them.
Yes, you
But
can.
there is a routine cadence as well.
They have a work plan for every year. And I don't recall how they choose departments. But yeah, you can ask the audit department to do an audit of a department, and they will add it to the work plan.
They also have a nice dialogue kind of at, once a year where they're reaching out to departments. It's a very friendly, I would say friendly dialogue from the standpoint, like, we're not trying to call you out, we're trying to help you be better, and I think that helps
Spend your money
departments lean
wisely.
in. And they say, hey, is there anything that gives you pause? Are there any processes you want us to review that you feel like, maybe hold some risk or could be improved? So they really come at it from the spirit of help, and they engage departments at least once a year to let them flag anything they'd like from a helpful perspective too.
Yeah, they're a really good department. All of our departments are good, but I really like the
Who
audit
runs this department? I don't know if I've met her.
Lauren Riley, she's fantastic.
I don't know if I've met her.
You should introduce yourself, she's great. All right, next one, so no issues with internal audit. Next one is property assessor. And this was another one, just had one of the smaller percentages of total budget used. So that's why they got flagged. Fiscal year '23, there were 9 vacancies. Let's see. They received 8 additional positions. At the beginning of fiscal year 23, at the end of the fiscal year, they had 7 vacancies due to new positions, resignations, and retirements. They didn't spend any of their salary savings. Alright, so budget items that came under budget, appraisal and negotiation, $311,485. This line item is for hiring experts in appeal hearings on an as-needed basis. The timeline for hiring experts varies throughout the calendar year. We anticipate these funds being used this fiscal year unless the hearings which are scheduled by the State Board of Equalization are after June 30, 2025. Management consultant, we anticipated hiring an additional consultant for appeals division, so that didn't happen. Subscriptions, funds were budgeted in anticipation of new subscription agreements used for additional evaluation tools. Not all subscription agreements were completed by the end of fiscal year 24. Other repair maintenance, that was just $24,000. We did not have to use funds for any unexpected repairs. Nothing sticks out. Seems like they have funds allocated in case they need it, depending on what the appeals process looks like. And it wasn't as heavy as anticipated, or contracts weren't in place by the end of the fiscal year. So that's why it shows up as salary savings. Anything stick out as an issue? Here, we don't have, I'm just pulling them as I see them.
Okay.
Thank you. We only have one department that we want to have some follow-up with, and that's parks, but we can bring you up to speed when we get through them.
Thank you. And I'll go back and watch it, so y'all don't have to recap.
Okay, cool. All right, next one I have is general services. You got it? All right, so fiscal year 23, general services had 22 vacancies. At the conclusion of fiscal year 23, there were 19 vacancies. 19 vacancies in fleet, 1 vacancy in sustainability, 1 vacancy in building operations, and 1 vacancy in administration. 19 of the 22 vacancies were in active recruitment hiring processes at the end of fiscal year 23. All right, fiscal year 24. Looks like there's still 22 total vacancies, 12 vacancies in fleet, 7 in building operations, 1 vacancy in postal services, 1 vacancy in admin, 1 vacant assistant director position. 20 of the 22 positions were in active recruitment hiring on May 29th, 24.
Oh, okay.
Salary savings of $2,053,027.80 in fiscal year 23. How were they spent? The salary savings in fleet were necessary to cover budget overages for auto repair services and fuel. Auto repair services were provided on an as-needed basis throughout the year. Fuel purchases were also made throughout the year. The salary savings in the GSD were necessary to cover budget overages for repairs, maintenance, and utilities for metro facilities. Then in fiscal year 24, their total salary savings looks to be a little over $3 million. How did they spend that? The fleet salary savings reverted to fund balance in accordance with finance policy. So the fleet salary savings was $2,033,510.06. The salary savings in the GSD were necessary to cover budget overages for repairs, maintenance, and utilities for metro facilities. And then the question about were there any money spent on non-salary related items, and that's the utility. The salary savings were used to provide necessary services and to cover utility expenses which exceeded the budget. All expenses were approved through Metro's R12 system, which includes finance review and approval. So this is another department that's using salary savings for non-salary items that are necessary: auto repair, fuel.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Utilities, like, I mean, we gotta pay them, but like, it'd
Is
be
there a
nice,
different bucket?
yeah,
Yeah.
to know like how much they were really costing.
Because this department's definitely underfunded, I think.
think
You know,
so?
just based on, me talking with Gerald and, that we just approved the, report to do the maintenance on the buildings to see what each building Metro Parks owns, General owns and stuff, and then the fleet. I mean, they just got a big chunk of money. Because believe it or not, our fire engines, and I always revert fire, but that's what I did, those are the people that I see. Some of them are on like their last leg, literally. Yeah, this is definitely a department that's underfunded.
So is it, I understand, oh, I'm sorry.
No, please never apologize. What's interesting about, like, a couple of observations, one, at least on the fleet vacancies, there is a massive fleet shortage of professional workers skilled workers that actually do this work. That is a nationwide problem, but it is really bad in the Middle Tennessee market. It's been that way for a couple of years. They have been in very good communication with us during some of those challenges over the past couple of years, Stacy Wall and his team, to try to build that up. And we've been able to make improvements with and adaptations within the pay plan to increase many of those classifications and that pay to where they're starting to get traction on some of those vacancies. So you see the vacancies in fleet coming down, but that has been a real problem, and there's been a lot of intensive efforts by general services, like boots on the ground, to try to get more people in that pipeline. I think it's starting to pay off, but despite some of their best efforts, they were having a hard
What
time.
kind of, is that like mechanics? Like what
Yeah,
kind of-
heavy duty mechanics, yeah.
Yes.
They used to be like at $20 and $25 for a flat rate. Now they're like $60 a flat rate. And a new car dealer's paying that. So they're not gonna
Absolutely.
leave a new car dealer to go to another place making $30.
They chase, this population chases.
The money, the dollar.
25 cent, the dollar raise. And, one of the terms I think that Director Potter used that's totally true in this particular space. If you do this work, you can
Write your check.
you can kind of write your check. If you have your own tools, you name your price. So they've done a lot of adaptive things, and I think they're starting to make. Stacy Wall and his team have said that they're starting to make real gains here. And then the other thing is, I think a couple of things were going on. Velvet was keeping the director position going much longer, I think, than she had hoped. She did a wonderful job. But now that we have Gerald in place, and at the same time we were filling out that real estate planning component and putting our arms around it, and I think Councilmember Webb was kind of talking about that. As they're taking on parts of that, I think they're in a state of kind of movement as they're building out new divisions. And then you guys approved the MOU, bringing some of those public property standards as part of that real estate portfolio component that they really need to be getting their arms around. So I feel like they're going through a state of flux where I think a lot of those vacancies are gonna start filling out. And we know that they've hired Dawn to be the assistant director, so some of these vacancies are, I think, still right sizing as they are organizing that structure, and then Fleet had a particular deficit in this market that we have been well known and had a really strong dialogue with general services on.
So they're needing the positions, because if they were to fill these positions, they wouldn't have the money to cover, well, they would need a supplemental, but they wouldn't have the money to cover these auto repair services and fuel and utilities.
I think it's worth having a conversation, and that may go to Councilmember Webb's point, that they may be needing all those funds, they're just using them however they do to live within their means. They're good, strong internal partners, so I know they're always working with finance. But it may be, I know they've been trying to get those fleet needs for a while, but they may be shorted on other needs, and I think it's worth a dialogue with the department just to make sure they've got enough.
Yeah.
I know years ago, we used to do all the fleet work for all the vehicles at our Ford store. They don't, now they do everything in-house. But also, White's Creek used to have, and I think even McGavick used to have, is it Maplewood?
Maplewood.
That did a program with mechanics. I don't, does either one of them do?
Can I tell you?
Any three of them do it
General
here?
Services worked with us. They had this beautiful structure. They were working directly with those programs, like pipeline straight into them. Went in, had this whole plan, executed it, and Bridgestone and Firestone had taken every one of them
Wow, yeah, for the money, because of the money.
because of the money.
They do this.
So they
they chase the money, this group does.
departments, like you see, like, you know, NDOT's been making gains on like engineering trainings, boots on the ground, getting people out of engineering programs, etc. This years ago, General Services was doing the same thing, and it's I hated it because they had really had a really good program. But there are pipelines, like Fire builds pipelines quite a bit with James Lawson because of their kind of EMT programs that are coming out of there.
Yeah.
They've got to they kind of work them for a few more years until they get old enough, but they start building those pipelines. And so the pipelines into the academies within metro schools is something that a number of departments utilize.
I was actually amazed when I went into James Lawson and the programs that you can go through in that high school and graduate with, like the lower level nursing degree. I mean, have you ever been in there?
12 to
Well, in the high school?
Yeah. I had never been in there.
Not since it opened.
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, I was like, I thought I was in a college.
It's a very nice, yeah. It's a
Yeah,
very nice school.
but I wonder if we could work something back out with that kind of program, getting it back into the high schools and stuff. Because we're always gonna need mechanics.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I think that's a conversation that we can bring to the school board and maybe
What do you
have that
think?
conversation. And
Yeah.
also there may be some, I know there are job readiness programs that help plug in people in the pipeline. So that may be something that, I know I have a couple of partners I work with and some volunteer agencies I work with that I can flag that and bring that into conversation. Chair, if I may,
Go ahead.
I had a question for Mr. Pratt. Thank you for being here. So the conversation that we were just having was basically, General Services basically needed their vacancies because without the vacancies, they wouldn't have been able to pay for these repairs. And forgive me if y'all have kind of already discussed this, but I guess my thought, and I guess that's kind of the meat of this working group and the kind of the point of the working group is that departments are, in the cases where departments are using vacancies to kind of plug holes in the budget, like, is there a better way, or do you know of a better way that we can fund these departments at the appropriate level so that, I think for us, and I don't want to speak for the whole group, but I think for us, we want to make sure that people are funded appropriately. We want to make sure that that it's transparent. We don't want people holding on to vacancies where money could be used in other places, but we also want people to be funded at the appropriate amount. So, like, if this means that maybe they don't need these 20 vacancies, but they need an extra $2 million in their budget that's actually allocated for the things that they need as opposed to allocated to salary, like, we want to be able to do that. We also don't want to really, like, tie people's hands. Like, we do want there to be, like, some flexibility. But do you have any, like, recommendations? And again, Chair, that may be kind of to the meat of what we're trying to do for this whole working group. But I don't want us to back people in a corner where they can't use the money the way that they need to use it. But for the sake of transparency in government, we also want to make sure that people are doing with the money what we are allocating the money to be used for.
Yes, that's a great question. Given this year, it would be probably a different explanation because there was so little input into the budget. But I would have to go back and look at those departments and look at these responses, of course. The budget kind of has that sort of outlet, which is the 4% pool. And 4% allocations, what those departments have been given. And I don't know those departments' business and operations and what they're planning to do. It all has a factor on how much did they need. And, you know, in the budget process to achieve the things that, you know, the budget wanted to achieve, there may have been, you know, offsets where you use some of your salary savings, get some 4%, but do this new project and get these things, do these initiatives. It's a puzzle.
Yeah.
And what they actually needed versus what they were asked to do versus what their core areas of business are. I mean, it's a great question. I really would like to understand more about the operations of each department, understand what the real cost of operations is, look at the assets schedule, and look at, you know, what depreciation is. I think that's a Metro-wide question. What's going on with the buildings, with the assets, depreciation, cycle times, and then what does it take to actually fund that?
And one thing I want to add to that too, in addition to that, I wonder if it would be worthwhile, like maybe one thing that comes out of this is if we have finance, and I'm sure that y'all do this. Sometimes we hear something different from particular entities, and there's one entity in particular I'm thinking about. But I wonder if it would be beneficial to maybe, once we get all of this kind of wrapped up, all neat, pretty with a bow, to host some type of like mandatory training with our like departments, department heads, whoever their finance people are, to make sure that they understand what is appropriate to go through operational budget, what's appropriate to go through the 4% fund, when it's appropriate to use salary savings, because there have been entities in which we've seen requests, Councilor Toombs and I, in our various roles as we've alternated between chair and vice chair of budget, where we've seen people using operational money for something that should be a 4% fund request, and just in having some of those conversations, sometimes people are like, oh, I didn't know, you know, that we were supposed to do this, when it's like, how can you not know? So just maybe, I think if there's some type of training, once we kind of resolve all of this and get a better idea of how we want to move forward, maybe if there's some type of training that the departments can go through, then they no longer have that ability to say that they didn't know, that wasn't appropriate use of the funds. Not that it's, and I want to be really clear, because I'm not saying anybody's doing anything illegal, immoral, or unethical. They have the flexibility to do that, but that may not be the best or most appropriate way of usage of funds.
Definitely, and I know finance, my team, in OMB, we actually do, I mean, we have process and procedures that, you know, dictate what can be used, when it can be used. And I think, you know, people, new staff in their positions and stuff may not know, or may have, you know, been using outdated models, but I'm about training. I think that you hit it on the head. The training and getting out to the departments, making sure that that they're up to date about, you know, what is, what isn't, and then us updating our source documents and just continually working with them to inform them, oh, this doesn't meet the need of your normal operating budget. Can you put in a 4% request? But because the one thing we do make sure we watch is the personnel. So that's the one where we're like, okay, you can't do this. Right. But, you know, depending upon, you know, if it gets them ahead, they're like, okay, you can use this as this one-time source because it'll get your initiative ahead. You know, let's do that. But let's make a request in the next budget cycle to make sure that you're sustaining those efforts. So, but I think training is definitely one of the things that we definitely want to work on a lot more.
Okay. Thank you.
I was just gonna say, let's work together, because there are a lot of things we can leverage in different ways that would lessen that load, right? The worst part is, like, your staff is already taxed. You go and do a one-time training, except it's just one time. And then people are moving in and out of these things. They forget certain things because they're not routine expenses.
Absolutely.
So I have ideas about things we can leverage that will make it something that can be on demand, either through LMS, through the SharePoint site, but I have some ideas about that, so I'm happy to help support that.
Thank you.
Also, just wanna let you know, I just got a text, I'm finding out from General Services, if they had these filled, they would not spend those on auto repairs. They're having to spend the auto repairs and the $2 million because they don't have mechanics to actually do them in-house. So they have confirmed, specifically on General Services, because I think much to Chair Porterfield's point, the devil's in the details sometimes. It's not necessarily static from department to department, but General Service has said, yes, we would not have to spend those salary savings on those expenses if we had those positions filled, because they would be performing those services for us.
Gotcha.
So that is the case, much as I suspected because of that fleet shortage. They have now confirmed that with me. I just wanted to share that.
Okay.
Which, one more thing, Chair, which makes me wonder, and this is a conversation we keep coming back to with parks, it makes me wonder if we were able to increase the pay for those positions, would it then make it more lucrative for people to take those positions to the point of Bridgestone snatching people up because they can pay more? If we're able to pay more, will that then balance things out, because maybe they won't have to spend as much on, like when you're spending for a consultant, it's more expensive than when you have a FTE. So I wonder if it will be a net benefit for the city if we're able to increase the pay and they can have, they can actually recruit and retain people.
A lot of that's changed. Our pay has gone up on average about 35-40% over the past 4 years.
Amazing, thank you.
So it's very good. And trades and labor specifically, we, on the trade schedule a couple years ago, we went up 2, if not 3 grades total.
Okay.
So there was a huge jump on trades and labor, and we've continued to target that. But they're actually, we were saying, there's a really good dialogue with Stacy Wall and his team on Fleet. They are like, okay, we're making traction. We're actually starting to get these hired. And you can see as we're making these moves that some of those things are starting to come down. But we've also got to be promoting that, trades is a great line of work.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we've forgotten about that. There's a place for everybody here, but I think we should never take our eye off of pay, but I think we've really started to right-size this, and they're really starting to make gains on those vacancies in Fleet specifically.
And what are those pay increases based on? Like, are we doing studies to look at what's?
We do pay studies every single year.
Okay.
So we do targeted pay studies every year, right? And we are reaching out to departments, like, even though it doesn't look like it necessarily, comp is a year-round thing for us. As soon as you guys approve a pay plan and we implement and push all those pay increases in July, our comp team takes a breath for about a week or two, and then we start reaching out to departments. We're like, hey, where are your pain points? Are you having attrition issues, retention issues, recruitment issues? Are there any particular pain points that you believe may be associated with potential pay? And we start getting feedback back from departments and even unions, right, as part of that scope. And then we start studying and really targeting. So we do that every single year, and then make market adjustments as we need to. And that's actually what triggered trades and labor coming up 2 and 3 grades 2 years ago, and that was all in-house. We also, if you recall, last budget cycle, you all gave us money for us to engage a third-party compensation expert, national expert. Mercer was who we got in the RFP process. They are a national comp leader. I mean, probably arguably the national comp leader. Each consultant kind of has their lane. Mercer's lane is comp. They helped us complete a comp study just in the past 12 months or so. Most of the data components related to the market studies actually occurred or in the current pay plan. There were a handful of other things because the study kind of spanned across pay plans. There are a few more things we will be implementing going into this cycle, and if you guys recall, we highlighted a number of the high pain points, whether it was slotting, whether it was what should we be using to determine our wage growth, etc. So we've got a lot of those structural recommendations and changes to the pay plan coming forward in this next cycle. But a lot of the market data to put people in the right place, that happens every year. And the one that Mercer helped us do, which was great, big, and comprehensive, is pretty much in the current pay plan. We didn't have a lot of outliers being below market, and I think it's because we've had such tremendous wage growth over the past 4 years that we didn't fall outside the market corridor. So the ones that we did fall low, we trued those up and brought them to market, and they're baked in the current pay plans.
And I'm sure another thing that's hurting Fleet with the vehicles is the training requirement. You're not talking about just a regular mechanic. And this day and time, the cars have become so more electrical. It's a different kind of mechanic, and they have to be trained to a certain level to work on certain things. So it makes it hard. So if we don't have that competitive pay, you're not going to get them, period. So, yeah.
So do I think it's still worth it to kind of have some follow-up with
Yeah.
general services though. But I think that's a really good point that
But it sounds like their dialogue with us has been really positive. We have a really strong relationship, and Stacy says we're getting there. But to your point, I think we can't ever take our eyes off of it.
And there's still actually the overages to pay for repairs, maintenance, and utilities for metro facilities.
Yes, and that could be related to the building operations vacancies that I saw in this
Okay.
past year, maybe in the
If they're paying someone.
FY24. I saw there were a few of those that could have been related to that.
Okay.
But it is a trade that it's just wide open for success for anybody that loves cars.
Got it. All right, next packet I see is MMPD. All right, so, and there's two parts to theirs. We've got the Word document, then there's a spreadsheet with their positions on it. All right, so, everybody got it?
It's this one, right?
It's this one.
Yeah.
Got it.
All right, fiscal year 23, MMPD had 302.35 vacancies. Their records show 299. Let's see. But this overstates actual vacancies because it does not include the training academy enrollees, which numbered 139. Okay, so they had 299 vacancies, but 139 people were basically in the queue deploying as new officers.
Got it, okay.
And then on the spreadsheet, they've included actual salary per training academy enrollee. Also include our vacant positions by classification and beginning ranges for each of those positions in the relevant fiscal year. Okay. Fiscal year 24, they had 263 vacancies, but they had 122 training academy enrollees. They've also included that on the spreadsheet. Number 3 deals with salary savings. How was the $15,542,669.34 in salary savings spent in fiscal year 23? Let's see. It says the $15 million figure represents expenses for solely regular pay, leave pay, and holiday pay. Additional salary-related expenditures in fiscal year 23 included shift differential, longevity pay, paid family leave, injury on duty pay, and state-funded retention pay, totaling $5,198,494.23. This exceeded the $3,701,900 budgeted for these items, creating a budget deficit of about $1.5 million. To mitigate sworn staffing shortages and maintain adequate staffing, MMPD relied on overtime initiatives. Overtime expenses exceeded the budget by $10,169,710.75. That's end of shift and initiative overtime, and $795,906.15 court mandated overtime, for a total of about $10.9 million. Adjusted for these factors, actual fiscal year 23 salary savings was $3,080,458.21. These salary savings were used to offset contractual obligations that were underfunded in the operating non-salary budget. The fiscal year 23 non-salary budget, which is $30,198,900. Does that mean of their total budget, only $30 million is non-salary, the rest is salary? Is that right?
I would have to look that up.
Because their budget is about $300 million.
I'm sorry, I don't have that offhand.
Okay.
I wonder, are they saying that that's the part that they're saying that they were underfunded? Are they saying that they were underfunded 30 million?
I read it as that's their non-salary budget.
Okay.
And so the $3 million in salary savings were used to offset their non-salary budget. Let's see. Fiscal year 23 non-salary budget, $30,198,900 minus Metro internal service fees, $13,765,000 was $16,433,900. So they're saying, what are the internal service fees?
That's what I was about to ask.
So ITS has charges for all departments for cost of licenses and stuff like that. So that's factored into the budget, makes up their budget, so in that way they can operate and maintain and sustain those things. So every department is charged an internal service fee for ITS, and there's Journal Services has an internal service fee as well. It's just an internal charge that it's a bill back to the departments.
But wouldn't that be in their budget already? Like, wouldn't we provide them the funding for that? Because it looks like they're saying they didn't have the funding for that, right?
Or maybe
That's the
not
way it
enough.
looks, and I will have to investigate that a little bit more. We do associate increases for internal service charges, and maybe I just need to check into that one.
Okay, thank you.
So, looking at their total budget, MNPD's total budget, and then verifying by non-salary budget, are they saying that their total budget minus this 30 million is all salary? Does that make sense? Okay, so they're saying, at least how I'm reading it, their non-salary budget is at 30 million, but they have these internal service fees of 13.7 million, which is leaving them roughly $16.4 million left. So that 3 million in salary savings that they're saying they actually have is used to offset shortfalls in the following programs: fiscal affairs, $207,997.87. That's telecommunications charges exceeded budgeted amount. The excess of costs related to year-end contractual price increases were pushed down from Metro ITS to MNPD. Information technology, $996,988.07, underfunded contractual obligations. Training Academy, $1,432,699.77, underfunded contractual obligations related to initial issue for new officers, additional training sessions. Specialized investigations, $597,347.91, fuel and maintenance budget shortages. Department-wide, $609,318, unbudgeted uniform allowance shortfall for sworn officers. Police vehicle direct charges, $117,603.97, charges associated with retention of vehicles due to deployment delays of new fleet vehicles. So is that basically like keeping cars that have passed their useful life, waiting for a new car? That's how I interpreted that.
Yeah.
Okay. So how much in salary savings did MNPD have for fiscal year 24? Using the same methodology, basically taking out the overtime, they actually had $6,205,667.12 in initial salary savings. Unlike in fiscal year 23, fringe benefits were not fully funded in fiscal year 24, and fringe budget deficit has been $591,830.92. This budget shortfall was offset by year-end salary savings. Additionally, the secondary employment unit budget was insufficient to cover operations, even though all costs were offset by revenue. Thus, there was an additional budget deficit of $1,302,824.72 that had to be absorbed by the department. Taking the fringe shortage and SEU deficit into account, the final salary savings for fiscal year 24 was $4,311,011.48. How did they spend it? That money was used to offset contractual obligations that were underfunded in the operating non-salary budget. So the fiscal year non-salary budget was $37,180,700 minus Metro internal service fees, which is $15,472,300, leaving them $21,708,400. Fiscal year 24 salary savings, which was the $6.2 million, were used to offset shortfalls in the following programs: Animal operations, $136,428.53. Underfunded contractual obligations and care of MMPD service animals. Information technology, $1,020,351.68. Underfunded contractual obligations. Training Academy, $2,059,590.33. Underfunded contractual obligations related to initial issue for new officers and shortfalls in the TASER 10 amendment payment. Specialized investigations, $286,369.86. Fuel and maintenance budget shortages. Department-wide, $293,856.80. Uniform allowance shortfall for sworn officers. Rapid school safety, $212,762.07. Underfunded contractual obligations. Fugitives, $49,688.87. Reimbursable costs for transport of fugitives exceeded budgeted amount. Revenue offsetting, I don't know what that means. SWAT, $141,893.97. Underfunded contractual obligations. Police vehicle direct charges, $124,393.58. Charges associated with retention of vehicles due to deployment delays of new fleet vehicles. Says they maintain open lines of communication with Metro Finance, especially in situations when a non-salary contractual as well as other unforeseen obligations create the general fund year-end budget deficit. I have so many questions.
I have questions
This is
on what they mean about shortfalls in the TASER 10 amendment payment. Do you happen to know what that is, Mr. Pratt?
Not offhand, I'm sorry.
Okay, no worries. We could request follow up.
Yeah, they're definitely on the list for departments to follow up with, because I'm wondering how they have so many underfunded contractual obligations.
Well, that's what, one of the things that strikes out at me is the fringe benefits. Why is that not in the budget?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I thought
I'm
that was
like,
required to
I'm a
pay.
little,
So that is actually, so the way we do fringe benefits, so when we do the budget, we take a snapshot, and then the vacant positions and everything else starts to move around. So we give them as much as we believe they need, and as far as true up and stuff. But it's never, we never give a department all the fringe benefits or all the benefit amounts that we have, because the positions move so much. So we give them what the snapshot says, and then once they start to get fully filled up, that's when we work with them and say, okay, we'll give you a little bit more fringe benefits because now you got 10 more staff and your budget is now exceeding that. That's why we do the bar reports. The bar reports kind of show us, okay, yes, you got more staff than what you had at the snapshot. We need to give you more fringe benefits from the admin account down to your account. So we make those changes from the admin account benefits down to the department accounts as we go along. But yeah, it's a snapshot. It's a point in time, and we know that even with this report, the vacancy reports, those vacant positions get filled, and those filled positions become vacant. So you kind of play the averages at a point in time. But yeah, larger departments suffer that the most, because especially with the classes for fire, police, sheriff, they're in classes, and once those recruits start to come on, then we have a catch-up game where we have to give them more money because they have more people now from that trainee position to the actual full salary position.
so are you saying like the plans aren't fully funded?
They're mostly funded, so yeah, they're mostly
When you say
funded.
mostly funded, I mean,
Yeah,
so they're
so-
not fully funded right now?
So we don't know how many trainees are going to make it to actual to be full-time police. So we take the amount of the vacant position we have at that time, of when they make it through, it may exceed how many positions were budgeted or captured at that snapshot. So we have to just catch up for those vacant positions, and we do. So that's why we have in the admin account the benefits budget that we look at over the course of the year and give departments as much benefit budgets as they need if they're starting to exceed the amount that they were originally given at true up.
So I'm gonna see if I understand this correctly. So let's say that you all, and I'm just gonna use police because we're talking about police. So let's say police has 100 vacancies. So they have a portion of the fringe benefits for some of those vacancies, but not the full amount, and they bring on 50 people, now you bring them up to speed to make sure that they have enough to pay the fringe benefits for those 50 people. And then as they're bringing more people on, you all are catching up and still giving them the 100% for the actual positions that they have. They only get a portion when it's a vacancy, but when it's an actual body and they've hired somebody and they've made it through training, you then give them the full amount for their benefits.
With a caveat, because we do say, do you have enough vacancies to cover that? So that is one of the areas where police is correct. Where we say, okay, you have this much vacancy savings, go ahead and use that for benefits.
Okay.
You don't need any more, because we're not gonna give them more than what
Gotcha.
what they're owed. And if they can use their vacancy savings without going, because everything in the benefits account and the admin account goes back to fund balance, and that's
I
kind
gotcha.
of a stopgap for us. We give them enough, so a smaller department, we definitely have to give them the benefit amounts, because they won't have the turnover to generate the savings. So we say, here's your benefit amounts as it comes up. The larger departments, we look and monitor their budget and say, okay, yes, now you're hitting that threshold where we need to give you some portion of the benefits because now you're having more staff than we expected.
Okay, so it is an allowed expense that they can use their vacancy savings to cover the fringe benefits up to a point in which y'all need to step in and give them more money to cover the fringe benefits.
Correct.
Okay, that makes sense.
And with the, not knowing what the specific contracts are, but is this a situation where we were talking earlier about when you're doing salary savings, you want to look at one-time expenses? Are they creating these recurring obligations using salary savings?
I can't say what their methodology is for that, because they could identify, any department can identify one-time adequate uses for the salary savings that cover, which essentially could free up some other money to cover something else. So
Okay.
we identify the one-time uses for appropriate one-time expenditures.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I do want to, so I was looking at the Citizen Guide to the Budget page. Yes, their 2023 operating dollars were $30,048,900. That's
So that means that's what they have. The
Right.
rest is for salary.
yes, the rest is for salary.
Wow.
Say that again, I missed that one. Are you saying?
So that 30 million
Uh-huh.
is their operating money. So everything else is salary.
Wait, what? So
Yeah.
the police full operating budget is 30 million?
So in 2023, their personnel services line was $225,734,100.
Get out
And
of
their
here.
total other services operating, which includes utilities, professional and purchase services, travel, tuition, dues, communications, etc., $30,048,900.
So are they, but they're
That is
classifying
wild.
like cars as personnel, right? Like, they're probably,
No.
surely like they're, or,
What is all
What
in
is,
there?
what
is
is all under
personnel?
personnel?
Yeah, I think I think our next question would be, what is all in their operating budget? What all is classified in their operating budget?
I'm gonna ask the
Well,
flip side of that and say, what's
yeah.
all in the personnel
Yeah, both,
budget?
that's both, and see.
The personnel is over 200 million. Is that just people? Because that's probably, it has to be salaried. Is training coming out of the personnel budget, or is it coming out of operating?
I would have to get you this. I want to be accurate. I want to get you
Okay.
this.
Well, how many total officers are there in the police department, employees?
It'll be great if we can get that information. If we can get anything that show, and I don't know, we're saying this out loud, but I'm not necessarily saying it to Mr. Pratt, but whoever, if we could get the information, what all falls under that personnel and what all falls under that operating budget. And is there anything under personnel that is not a physical human body?
In the 2023 again budget, to compare apples to apples, they had 2,215 positions.
You said 2,000, how much?
2,215 FTEs.
2,215. And then what was that, what was that personnel budget that year?
Personnel.
20 million, I mean 200 million.
25, 734, 100. And that doesn't incorporate the benefits amount. So benefits are running like 45 to 50%.
And
so
that was,
benefits are going to be
how
high.
many did you say?
2,215,
benefits
it's average of
would be-
90,000.
2,000.
About
About
40%.
2,215.
Of that 225 is just
I mean, well,
benefits?
that's,
Yeah, I would just, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that tracks.
that tracks.
I mean,
I mean, that
works out-
tracks that that's just people.
101,000.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying,
It's about
101, and that includes the benefits that
That
goes
includes the
into the
benefits,
plan.
Yeah.
Overtime, I would assume.
And overtime as well as.
Overtime, yeah.
As well.
So it's just
Golly.
30 million for all the cars, all the tasers, all the utilities, all the buildings, all
Well,
the
you gotta think about, it.
yellow tape.
There's 140, I mean,
know
how many
how-
officers, there's 1,000?
Yeah.
So you're talking about cars, you got, and one thing about it, okay, so cars, maintenance on the cars, and they're driving them, I mean, think about it, how often do you have to change your oil, put tires on?
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
crazy, isn't it?
Woof.
Well,
I think we all just gotta,
if-
you know, no matter, for the viewing audience, no matter how long you do this, we learn something new
Every day.
because we've been doing this
a long
5 years now, and that's the first we've ever heard that, like, literally.
Well, no, it seemed like a lot, that's why I said, well, how many employees, cause then you get, that's how you
Yeah.
really figure out if it's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look what we did, we realized with 2,215 employees divided by 200 million, it's really not a lot.
Yeah,
Because not everybody's making 101, you gotta remember that
absolutely.
too.
Yeah, some people that's gonna be on the lower
Yeah.
end, the
Yeah.
higher end, and you gotta factor in those, the
They have
fringe
a lot
benefits.
of, yeah, they have civilian positions and as well. Well, yeah, so
Takes a lot to run a
MNPD is
city,
definitely
don't it?
on the list of follow-up.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Great information. Thank you to all the departments. I'm sure people are watching, so thank you to the departments for giving us all this information.
And we have so much information, we may have to have a to be continued.
Yeah.
But let's see, it's 6:39. Let's do codes and see where we get, and maybe we can slide in one more. But let's do codes and see where we are.
I didn't get one for codes. What does it look
Yeah,
like?
that-
Lord, they gave us a whole booklet.
They did.
It did.
Lord.
Thank you.
Yeah, they had a whole spreadsheet with tabs.
This is really a lot of information when now I kind of just want that one chart from planning.
Yeah.
Really just
sorry,
broke
Coach.
it down, but
This is really, it's helpful though.
it's such an understandable way.
It really is, and we should probably make sure that this goes on the SharePoint.
It is.
Yeah.
It is on the SharePoint. Okay.
All this
And-
information's on the SharePoint.
And
It's
maybe
all
next
there.
time we should bring our laptops, because think about how much we just spent in paper and ink for all of this.
It's hard for me to see
Yeah.
it on the laptop.
Okay, that's fair.
So
Accessibility.
And
Okay.
I do like to write on stuff, but.
Okay, it'll just be
Yeah,
me.
me too, I like hard copies.
Alright, so in fiscal year 23, codes had 36 vacancies, and they included a spreadsheet to show what those positions are and if they're full or part-time.
Zoning
And-
examiners.
Oh, they gave us their whole employee list. Okay.
Budgeted salary, the
Names.
grade.
Okay. Oh shoot, how many vacant positions in 24 is on one of these spreadsheets?
It's on the third page.
Okay. Fiscal year 24 had
18.
18 vacancies, okay. So they had 36, and I know we added some positions to codes, and so they only had 18 vacancies at the end of fiscal year 24. Did codes spend any of the $1,472,237.36 in salary savings in fiscal year 23? They have their salary savings as $1,373,903.49. They didn't spend much, $55,000 spent on upgrading 7 office support representatives, seniors to administrative service officer 2s, and 1 customer service supervisor to an administrative services officer 4. 25,000 spent on upgrading a part-time property standards inspector position to full-time. 15,000 spent on backfilling electrical inspectors. 13,000 spent on short-term rental inspection staff upgrades. Fiscal year 24 salary savings is $2,020,610.64. And they gave a list of how they spent that money. The largest expense was $61,000 to rehire a director. Because Coles, Aaron, or Mr. Pratt, Coles typically has money going into the fund balance because they charge fees, right? So their revenue generated.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so their salary savings is purely just vacancies. They're not spending other than what they listed on here, which is for basically equity increases and reclassifications of positions. Any budget line items that came under budget, $225,000 in vehicle rental savings for fiscal year 24 due to vacant inspector positions and unpurchased cars. Will be greatly reduced in fiscal year 25 with inspector vacancies being filled. $87,000 in other license and fees for fiscal year 24 due to less warrants being utilized in environmental court. Will increase in fiscal year 25 as attorney and paralegal have been hired and will use warrants again. I don't see any issues with codes.
Their vacancies are probably hard to fill too, because you gotta have qualifications to do the job, and
And
they're hard to find.
They seem to be like,
Yeah.
to know exactly what is happening in there.
All right, I think we can squeeze in ITS, and then that'll be the last thing. We'll finish the rest of them after the new year.
They gave us a lot of spreadsheets too.
Yeah. With the one sheet and then
Okay, yeah.
okay. All right. We would like to first address the statement regarding the apparent underspending of 94.8. I think they may have misread that. Of 94.81% of the ITS budget,
Yeah.
resulting in $2,213,915.54 moving into Metro's fund balance. This was directly tied to fiscal year end closing entries made by the finance department without ITS involvement. Shots fired.
Right under that bus.
Should that be like 5.2 and not 94.81? Is that what we think?
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
The bulk of these adjustments were related to GASB accounting rule changes. The finance department's entries accounted for 2.12.
It's all his fault.
How are you feeling right now?
Prior to these entries, our year-end closing report indicated that ITS had utilized its entire budget with only $93,433 remaining unspent, resulting in spending 99.5% of the operating budget. And then they show their closing entries from their side. They address the vacant positions in their voluminous spreadsheet. So in fiscal year 23, they had 17 vacancies, but it looks like they hired 11. They filled 11 of those with a contractor, so they had 6 actual vacant positions.
Where are you looking?
On this page. Does that mean they went out and like
Oh, the blue
did
one.
like a contractor like outside source?
That's what I read.
Yeah. I know that they hire, they utilize their savings to hire contractors who are more apt to do the job.
What are they on?
I'm good, thank you.
Oh, this is one job I
And
couldn't
just
do.
have to pee.
In fiscal year 24, 18 vacancies, but they have 16 of them filled with contractors, so they only have 2 actual vacancies. As shown in the attached workbook, ITS uses salary savings to fund contracted labor. It is important to point out that ITS has a long-standing policy of initially hiring contractors for 6-month engagements before posting a position for full-time employment. That's interesting. This approach allows us to strategically balance our workforce by leveraging both contractors and full-time employees in alignment with our allocated operating budget. However, filling vacant positions has been challenging due to competitive market rates and the high demand for technology-based roles that require specialized skills and extensive experience. Says they didn't have any salary savings in fiscal year '24.
They spent it down to the last drop. They say y'all
They
ain't
wanna make
getting
sure they
this.
can do the job.
Except where finance screwed them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thanks, Erin. We're just joking. ICS is just jokes.
Yes, sorry.
No, I don't see, I don't, nothing jumps out.
Nothing
to
jumped out at me.
Yeah, they're using contracted labor. Contracted labor. All right, folks, we're gonna pause there.
Real quick, I just want to note, and I know I'm about to say something very unpopular. You only have 3 departments left.
3 left, it's 6:48.
I just want to point that out.
Okay.
Where are they
What
at?
3 do we
It's
have?
Health, NDOT, and library.
But where is the paperwork?
I don't have library or.
I don't have nothing
any of
left.
those.
I only have NDOT left.
I know there was
So-
library over there.
Yes, library.
Do y'all want
Oh,
to
yeah.
just knock them out?
Yeah.
We can't, we also, fire was overlooked, so they just got their questions today. So we will have fire.
We'll have to come back another day anyway.
Anyway.
Well, then I'm good with doing it on the other day.
Okay.
Since we have to come
I
back for
just
fire.
wanted you guys to know that you had 3
And I was
left.
like, you
Thank
can do
you.
it, you can do it.
I'm happy to go.
Do you want us to turn our unused
And I
printed ones
think-
back?
But I'd like to
in?
go ahead and get them, so,
Either keep them
we
if
can
you
read
have
them.
them,
And I-
you might just want to keep them
I think
for your
the
own.
responses from
reference.
NDOT are missing. 'Cause
I only have NDOT, but I don't have parks or library, so that's why I
I don't
Well,
want.
have-
you guys have run through
I have
parks,
parks,
I think.
but I don't
Yeah, I
have
don't have
library.
library,
and health.
health.
Library,
I don't have
not
health.
Sorry,
Library.
not parks, library.
Okay, here.
Library was over here.
We
I think
also
that these
have
are
these-
also
yeah.
libraries.
Here you go. Sorry.
And then health, I don't know that I saw,
This
but
is
I
still
know that it's in the
library.
SharePoint,
Okay.
so we may not have
Still
that,
library.
but it's, yeah, I know we've got a lot
Okay,
of
response 1 and
documents
response
Still
here.
library.
Get out of here. Thank you for being thorough, library.
Oh,
Wait,
health.
This is response 3, and then this says
And this
response
is 2
4,
and response-
and this is response 6, 5, and 6. Wait, this is not just one stack. This is all the way through response 6.
Well, those are all for
But
library
it's all
though.
library.
Okay, so hold on. Here's one for you.
Okay.
Councilmember Webb, do you need library?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let
This
me
is
make a.
library
Let me make
number
a.
1.
Yeah. let me
I
make a
need
count.
library, NDOT, and health.
Do you need library, share?
I have library.
Okay, so that's all.
We
I
have
need.
all the
I didn't need
library?
those responses, I'm sorry.
Okay, let me make pass. Will you
Okay.
label
And
them
this
for me?
is all I have
are
for
sorry,
NDOT.
these
I
are
don't
library
have any-
ones.
One,
I
this
think
is
that
one.
that's
The
all.
fire department.
And we're gonna make 3 piles, one for each of us.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Okay.
Here's NDOT for you.
I don't know
Oh,
if they
you
are
do
the
have-
biggest. I'm
I think that's
trying to think of
NDOT.
NDOT.
Oh, it is?
And then
Let me
these
check
are
and see what we've got in
two.
NDOT.
SharePoint.
NDOT's up
And
there.
health didn't get printed, y'all, so we'll have
Okay.
that.
It looks like we don't have.
Yeah, I'm
those.
anxious
all
to see
two.
NDOT.
I remember health was one that we were waiting on,
I
so.
think this one is more than one together.
And
I
do
need
we,
one more, because I actually need one for me too now.
Okay.
do we want to try to,
Alright, I started writing library.
Library
I'm
and
just gonna write
NDOT.
L2.
Okay.
do we wanna try to schedule the
And
next
health.
meeting or just wait and
Um,
figure it out via email sent from council office?
I mean,
I'd like to know, like, sorta kinda now, if we can get close. I don't have my
Yeah.
calendar with me, but if not, I mean,
I'm
it's
good
up to
with
me.
either
I'm
one.
good with either one.
you're right. I mean, my January's crazy, so.
I mean, I don't have my calendar with me right now, so.
Oh, okay.
I mean, but we could get close. I mean, we could tentatively, if and I can put it on there if we,
So is there any, so we don't have a council meeting until the 21st.
Correct.
huh?
Is it,
We don't have the first meeting in January. In January, we don't have the first meeting, we just have the second meeting.
We don't have a meeting till the 21st?
Yeah.
You get a little bit of
So-
respite.
Wow.
is there an
It's your only
appetite,
vacation, you better like it.
is there an appetite to have a meeting prior to the 21st? Or do we wanna try to schedule something after, when we're back?
I'm fine with enjoying my break, but I will defer to the will of the body.
Hey,
I I guess,
It's the
It
only
doesn't
break
matter
we
to
gonna
me.
get.
I'm not going anywhere. It doesn't matter to me.
when did our questionnaires on budget?
They may have a preference. Well, they'll be working.
Council questionnaires?
What the hell are we worried about y'all for?
Three.
Oh, I should.
When do they go out?
I'm just thinking like,
Budget hearings are
five.
in May.
Yeah, so like
So,
April, maybe
April?
March or April. Those are 5.
okay, so I mean, I think we have time
I
if
think
we're
we have
trying to like
time.
make sure that we're like asking them to all do it shortly.
so maybe the week after our council meeting, that last week in January.
And I'm fine, well, I don't know if this is popular for everybody else, but I'm fine with the day after the council meeting. The Wednesday or Thursday
Wednesday.
after the council meeting, if y'all are good with that.
The only thing is, I will say I threw it out.
That's true, cause that's gonna be a heavy council
I-
meeting.
I also threw
Oh,
it
it
out
is?
as one of several dates.
Then
for
you bring my
possible
sleeping bag?
Meeting today,
Oh,
so I don't-
okay.
but I don't know.
What about the last, January 28th is the last, Tuesday in January, and it's
January
a,
28th, I think, Councilman Prep T announced was gonna have a special rules meeting.
okay.
And that's
What about Monday the 27th? That's the Monday
I think
after.
that's okay.
I mean, we have a bunch of work things that month, so I'm out of town.
When,
Are you out of town that whole week?
the whole week?
I don't get back until 5:35 on Wednesday.
On
Okay, so
Thursday.
then let's say Thursday.
I
I
mean,
fly out that
tentatively,
Thursday,
it
the
just-
30th.
I threw that one out as an
Okay.
East Bank committee meeting.
So I'm out on, so then we could do the first week of February, but that's council. So we could do February 5th.
The
Or,
meeting will be lighter than the 21st.
yeah, we could do February
Just for
5th
public hearing.
or February 6th.
So either one of those days are fine.
Okay. So the 5th or 6th would be that Wednesday or Thursday. Jennifer, that sound like that's okay for you?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Do we think that we're nearing the end of this process? Because we do want to make sure that we're leaving enough time that if anything needs to be changed going into budget season.
So if we could, also at the next meeting, if we can go through, we got four
For more departments.
more departments. We do need to follow up with at least
Maybe
three.
if we have these 3 come that we wanna talk to, do them in the front, and then
Okay.
we can finish the last 4.
Okay, how about that?
That sounds good to me.
Maybe send
And
you
then
some
maybe-
questions that we wanna ask.
Send them
Off of
ahead
the
of
thing?
time. Right.
Yeah, and then we can do one more meeting to like maybe wrap up and do recommendations or something.
Assuming we don't have any follow-up questions.
Assuming there's
for
no
the-
follow-ups for the other ones. Or even if we
Maybe we should
do,
have them come. I mean, they wouldn't have that beforehand preparation like the ones we've already gone through,
true,
but they could be here to answer questions.
true.
And if they needed to like send a follow-up email, they could do that.
I
Well,
think
you know-
that'd be better, cause it would've been great if we had people here to like answer those questions. So I think if for the departments that we want to ask questions to, if they could be here, and then if we could have somebody from the remaining departments to be here, then we could wrap all of that up in one meeting, and then the next meeting can just be recommendations. And then if we have to go one more meeting at the recommendations, we can still wrap everything up in the month of February. And we'll be done.
These are both
What is
library.
mine?
What
I
day
got
did
yours
you
right
end
here.
up with, Delisha?
We said the February, I think we said 5 or 6.
One.
I think Hannah was looking at both. 5?
5.
Okay.
I don't
Five?
think we have
That's your whole
anything
pack.
scheduled.
February
We'll get
5th
to
or
those
5?
days.
This little pack.
Yeah, right now, but let me
Alright,
double
and
check. I'm
here
looking
is
at
your
our
full
council,
Okay, thank you.
I'm just looking at our council legislative calendar. So I don't know if there's other non-council events
Yeah.
those nights, but the 5th and the 6th of
Is
February are
this
both
health and
wide
not
open.
too?
No,
that's all library.
One of them didn't get printed, and one of them I think we don't have. Or do
We don't have help.
We don't have health, and NDOT hasn't been
And
printed.
don't have fire. I think what was printed from NDOT is what we
No
received.
answers to questions.
But I think that we may need to follow up and get a
Yeah.
narrative
Okay.
answer from them.
Okay.
So I think
Library, am I
that
taking?
works.
Okay.
So then can we get a save the date to those departments, the ones that we have follow-up questions with, and then the ones that we still need to do? Can we get a save the date, inviting them tentatively to a meeting on February the 5th? What time, Chair? 5:30?
5.
5, okay.
At 5 p.m.
Great work, everybody.
All right, I'm
Mr.
gonna
Pratt,
stop
does that
the
date work for
meeting
you?
adjourned.
Does that?
Yeah, no, I'll be here.
It's like-
Okay.
He's like, that's my birthday.
All right. That's my anniversary.
Any objection to the ending?
No,
All
and then,
right.
great meeting,
Thank you.
Chair.
Yeah, very productive meeting. Thank